You're not a team player. That's what they said right before tossing me out like yesterday's coffee. Funny thing, I was the only one who said no to Brad's wandering hands. And I paid for it. They called me difficult, problematic, a troublemaker who disrupted their precious office harmony. But here's what they didn't count on. I wasn't just any employee. I was the one holding the leash to their biggest client, a $9.8 million account that trusted me more than the company logo on my business card. They fired me for stirring trouble. What they didn't know was, trouble fights back. My name is Zoe Hartman, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the senior communications strategist who kept Vanguard Mercury's biggest clients from jumping ship. 33 years old, Yale communications degree, and a track record that made headhunters salivate. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. The Denver skyline stretched outside my corner office window that morning, all glass and ambition reaching toward the Colorado blue. I'd earned that view, along with the respect of every client who'd ever sat across from my conference table, especially Voltage Motors, our $9.8 million crown jewel. Zoe, you're a miracle worker, their CEO had said just days before, after I'd navigated them through a potential PR nightmare involving a battery recall. I don't know what we'd do without you. Turns out, I'd never get to find out what they'd do with me still around. It started with Brad Halston, our executive vice president of client relations. Silver fox type, always had his Mont Blanc pen clicking during meetings, wedding ring that he'd twist when he thought no one was looking. The first time his hand accidentally brushed my thigh during a strategy session, I chalked it up to the cramped conference room. The second time, when he cornered me by the coffee machine and told me how stunning I looked in my dress, I knew exactly what game he was playing. Brad, I'm flattered, but let's keep things professional, I'd said, stepping back until the counter dug into my spine. His smile never wavered. Of course, just being friendly. Friendly. That's what he called the text messages at 11 p.m. asking if I wanted to discuss the Voltage account over drinks. That's what he called showing up at my office door after everyone else had left, loosening his tie like we were in some bad corporate romance novel. The thing about being good at reading people, which you have to be in PR, is that you can see the storm coming before the first drops hit. I documented everything, screenshots, emails, a journal of incidents with dates and times. I wasn't naive enough to think HR was my friend, but I believed in the system enough to think evidence mattered. The morning I filed the complaint, Denver had that sharp October air that made everything feel more alive. I walked into the HR director's office, Rebecca Morrison, a woman who dressed like she was perpetually attending a funeral, and laid out my case with the same precision I'd use for a client presentation. These are serious allegations, Rebecca said, her fingers steepled like she was praying for this problem to disappear. We'll need to investigate thoroughly. I should have known then, should have recognized the careful way she avoided my eyes, the way she said allegations like they were already fiction. Within days, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Meeting invites disappeared from my calendar. Brad, meanwhile, walked the halls like he owned them, because in every way that mattered, he did. Zoe seems stressed lately. I overheard him telling our CEO, Troy Kessler, outside the executive bathroom. I'm worried about her judgment. That thing with the Morrison account last month, she nearly lost it for us with her intensity. The Morrison account, the one I'd saved by working 70-hour weeks while Brad was building relationships on the golf course. But history, I was learning, belonged to whoever spoke loudest in the halls of power. The performance review meeting came exactly 10 days after I'd filed the complaint. Rebecca Morrison sat across from me, flanked by Troy Kessler and, of course, Brad himself. The setup told me everything I needed to know before a single word was spoken. Zoe, we need to discuss some concerns about your recent behavior, Troy began, his voice carrying that false sympathy executives perfect when they're about to destroy someone. Several team members have come forward expressing discomfort with your aggressive communication style. I felt my jaw clench. Aggressive? Can you give me specific examples? Rebecca shuffled papers that I knew contained nothing but manufactured complaints. There have been reports that you create a hostile work environment, that you're not collaborative, that you make accusations without foundation. Is this about my HR complaint? I asked directly, watching Brad's face remain perfectly neutral, like a snake digesting its meal. This is about your pattern of behavior, Brad interjected smoothly. I've tried to mentor you, Zoe, but you seem to interpret professional guidance as something else entirely. It's concerning. The room spun slightly. He was really doing this, flipping the narrative so perfectly that I almost admired the craftsmanship. Almost. I have documentation. Your documentation, Rebecca interrupted, shows a troubling tendency to misinterpret normal workplace interactions. Perhaps you're dealing with some personal stress? We have an employee assistance program. They were offering me therapy for reporting harassment. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Over the next week, the whisper campaign intensified. Brad had apparently shared his concerns about my emotional stability with select colleagues. Melissa from accounts, who used to grab lunch with me every Friday, suddenly had deadlines. James from creative, who I'd mentored for 2 years, avoided eye contact in the elevator. You need to be careful. Sarah from legal warned me in the parking garage, glancing around like we were in a spy movie. Brad's been building a case. He's saying you've been stalking him, misreading signals, that you're upset he rejected your advances. That's insane, I breathed, my hands shaking on my car keys. Is it? Who do you think they'll believe, the EVP who brings in millions or the woman causing drama? She touched my arm gently. I'm sorry, Zoe. I really am. But you need to start looking for an exit strategy. Exit strategy. Like I was the problem that needed solving. The final meeting came on a Thursday. The conference room, the same one where I'd pitched the Voltage campaign that landed us the contract, felt like a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. We've completed our investigation, Troy announced, as if there had been any investigation at all. We found no evidence supporting your claims against Brad, however. We have documented numerous instances of you creating a hostile work environment. This is retaliation, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. This is exactly what happens when women speak up. And that attitude, Brad interrupted, leaning back in his chair like he owned the world, is exactly the problem. You see persecution everywhere. You interpret everything through this lens of victimhood. It's exhausting for your colleagues. Rebecca slid a folder across the table. We're offering you a severance package. 1 month's pay. Continuation of benefits through the end of the year. In exchange, you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and agree to resign effective immediately. And if I refuse? Troy's expression hardened. Then we'll proceed with termination for cause. No severance, no benefits. And we'll be obligated to share the reasons for your termination with future employers who call for references. They'd choreographed this perfectly. Take the money and shut up, or leave with nothing and a reputation in ruins. Either way, Brad won, either way. I was silenced. I need time to review this with my attorney, I said. You have until end of business today, Rebecca replied. Security will escort you to clean out your office. As I walked through the halls I'd commanded just weeks before, boxed up my awards and client thank you notes under the watchful eye of a security guard young enough to be my intern, I caught Brad watching from his office doorway. He raised his coffee mug in a mock toast, his wedding ring catching the light. Not a team player, he mouthed silently, his smile sharp as broken glass. I left Vanguard Mercury that day with a banker's box of memories and a fury that burned cold and patient. They thought they'd ended my story. They had no idea they'd just written the first chapter. The first week after being fired, I didn't leave my apartment. I sat in my downtown Denver loft, staring at the severance agreement like it might spontaneously combust if I hated it hard enough. 1 month's pay to buy my silence. 30 pieces of silver adjusted for inflation. My mother called daily from Phoenix. Just sign it and move on, honey. You'll find something better. Don't let them win by dwelling on it. My best friend Kate had similar advice over wine and takeout Thai. The best revenge is living well. Zoe, take their money, get a better job. Forget those assholes existed. But I couldn't forget. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brad's smirk. Every time I tried to update my resume, I imagined the reference calls. Zoe? Oh yes, brilliant strategist, but difficult. Created some internal challenges. Not quite the right cultural fit. Cultural fit? Corporate speak for she wouldn't play along. The anger sat in my chest like molten metal, burning and reshaping me into something harder. They'd taken my job, my reputation, my sense of safety in professional spaces. They'd made me feel small and crazy and alone. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd forgotten what I did for a living. I was a crisis management expert. I'd saved companies from scandals, turned PR nightmares into redemption stories, and understood better than most how perception became reality. If they wanted to play games with narrative, they'd chosen the wrong opponent. On day 8 of my unemployment, I did 2 things. First, I signed the severance agreement. Let them think they'd won, that their money had purchased my compliance. Second, I opened my laptop and began making a list. Not of grievances or revenge fantasies, but of assets, relationships, leverage points, opportunities. At the top of that list, Voltage Motors. Carly Vinton had been my primary contact at Voltage for 2 years. We'd weathered their battery recall together. Turned what could have been a company-killing crisis into a story about transparency and innovation. She'd sent a personal email after hearing about my departure. Denver's loss? Let me know where you land. Voltage goes where you go. I stared at that email for a long time, a plan beginning to crystallize. The thing about corporate contracts, I'd learned this from sitting in too many legal meetings, is that they're built on relationships as much as paperwork. Voltage's contract with Vanguard Mercury had my fingerprints all over it. Every crisis protocol, every key message, every strategic framework bore my DNA. Brad might have claimed the credit, but Carly knew the truth. I didn't respond to her email immediately. Instead, I spent 2 weeks in careful preparation. I researched every aspect of employment law around non-competes. PR consultants, thankfully, rarely had enforceable ones. I studied Voltage's upcoming challenges, a new product launch, increasing competition from Tesla, a potential acquisition that would need delicate handling. Then I crafted an email to Carly, not from my personal Gmail. That would look desperate. I created a new professional domain, Zoe Hartman Strategic, calm, clean, simple, confident. Carly, thank you for your kind words. I'm exploring strategic consulting opportunities and would love to discuss how I might continue supporting Voltage's communications needs in my new capacity. I understand the delicate nature of such a transition, but I believe we can find an arrangement that serves everyone's interests. Coffee next week? Her response came within an hour. Absolutely, name the time. That night, for the first time since being escorted from the building, I slept without dreams of Brad's face. The fury was still there, but it had transformed into something more useful than rage. It had become fuel. My family and friends meant well with their advice to move on, to let it go, to be the bigger person. But they didn't understand what had been taken from me. This wasn't just about a job or hurt feelings. This was about a system that protected predators and punished those who spoke up. This was about every woman who'd been gaslit into silence, who'd been told she was misreading situations, who'd been labeled difficult for expecting basic professional respect. They wanted me to disappear quietly, to accept that this was just how things worked. They wanted me to be another cautionary tale whispered about at industry happy hours. Remember what happened to that woman at Vanguard? Yeah, better to just keep your head down. But I'd built my career on understanding that perception was malleable, that narrative could be reshaped, that sometimes the best defense was a perfectly executed offense. They'd fired me for stirring trouble? They had no idea what trouble looked like. As I prepared for my meeting with Carly, I thought about Brad, probably sitting in his corner office, confident that he'd eliminated a threat. I thought about Troy, assured that his boys' club would continue operating without disruption. I thought about Rebecca in HR, filed away her own documentation to protect the company from lawsuits. They all believed they'd won. They believed I'd take my severance, lick my wounds, and fade away. They were about to learn why you should never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The coffee shop Carly suggested was deliberately neutral, a trendy spot in Lodo, far from Vanguard Mercury's territory. She arrived 10 minutes early, which told me everything about how seriously she was taking this meeting. Zoe. She stood to hug me, her expression mixing professional warmth with genuine concern. I have to say, when I heard about your departure, I was shocked, and frankly, disappointed in Vanguard. I'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times, but sincerity came naturally. I appreciate that, Carly. It wasn't how I envisioned ending my time there, but sometimes change creates opportunity. She studied me over her cortado, those sharp executive eyes that missed nothing. Carly Vinton hadn't become Voltage's chief strategy officer at 38 by being naive about corporate politics. Can I be direct? She asked. I'd expect nothing less. The timing is suspicious. You handle our crisis brilliantly. And 2 weeks later, you're gone? Brad Halston called to assure me the transition would be seamless, but he couldn't answer basic questions about our Q4 strategy. She leaned forward. What really happened? I'd prepared for this too. The NDA prevented me from discussing the harassment allegations directly. But I was a communications expert. I knew how to tell a story without telling it. Let's just say that Vanguard Mercury and I had different visions for professional conduct and workplace culture, I said carefully. I believe in transparency, accountability, and protecting the interests of clients above internal politics. Sometimes those values create friction? Her eyes narrowed slightly. She was reading between the lines perfectly. I see. And these values you mention, they're portable? Extremely portable. In fact, I'm launching my own strategic consulting firm. I'll be able to provide the same level of service, the same strategic insight, but with more flexibility and a direct line of communication. Interesting. She pulled out her phone, checking something. You know, we're about to announce the Apex acquisition. It's going to be complicated. Regulatory hurdles, potential cultural clashes, media scrutiny. We need someone who understands our DNA. My heart rate accelerated, but I kept my voice steady. I wrote your crisis communication protocols. I know every stakeholder, every potential pain point, every message that resonates with your audience. The question is whether Voltage is comfortable making a change. The question, Carly corrected, is whether Vanguard Mercury has given us reason to stay. Brad's been our account lead for exactly 1 week, and he's already suggested strategies that would have us sounding like every other tech company. Very corporate, very safe, very not us. She let that hang in the air between us. I recognized the negotiation dance. She was giving me room to make an offer. I could develop a comprehensive proposal for managing the acquisition announcement and subsequent integration communications. I offered independent consultant rates, month to month to start so you can evaluate the arrangement. No long-term commitment required. And Vanguard, legal issues? I've reviewed my contracts thoroughly. No non-compete for strategic consulting. As long as I'm not actively soliciting their employees or sharing proprietary information, which I would never do, I'm within my rights to operate independently. Carly smiled for the first time since sitting down. You know what I've always appreciated about you, Zoe? You plan for every contingency. It's very reassuring. We spent the next hour discussing details, but I knew from her first smile that I'd won. By the time we shook hands, I had a verbal agreement for a consulting contract that would pay 70% of what Voltage paid Vanguard monthly, directly to me. That evening, I called my attorney, Jennifer Moss, who specialized in employment law. I need you to review something, I said, forwarding Carly's follow-up email. And while you're at it, I want to discuss what happens if a former employer tries to interfere with my new business relationships. Are you expecting interference? Jennifer asked. I'm expecting Brad Halston to lose his mind when he finds out. I want to be ready. She laughed. God, I love when women stop playing nice. Send me everything. While Jennifer worked on the legal framework, I focused on the practical. I incorporated my LLC, set up professional insurance, created a basic website. Nothing flashy, just clean, professional. And clearly stating my specialties: crisis management, strategic communications, and executive consulting for innovative technology companies. I also did something else. I reached out to 3 former colleagues from other agencies, women who'd left under suspicious circumstances. Just coffee, just catching up. But I was planting seeds, building a network of people who understood what it was like to be pushed out for refusing to play along. You're building something, my friend Diana observed after I told her about Voltage. She'd left her agency after reporting a handsy CFO. Not just a business, you're building an alternative. She was right. With every step away from Vanguard Mercury's toxicity, I felt more like myself. The consultant who'd built her reputation on brutal honesty and brilliant strategy. The woman who'd refused to smile and pretend Brad's hands were acceptable. A week before the announcement would go public, I had one final meeting with Carly. This time, she brought her CEO, Marcus Webb, a detail she'd failed to mention in advance. Ms. Hartman, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Carly's been singing your praises, says you're the only reason we survived the battery recall with our reputation intact. Your company's commitment to transparency made my job easier. I deflected smoothly. Modesty doesn't suit you, he said bluntly. We both know Vanguard would have had us issuing generic corporate apologies. You convinced us to own the problem and fix it publicly. That took guts. It took trusting the intelligence of your customers, I corrected. Something I notice your current representation seems to have forgotten. Marcus and Carly exchanged glances. We're prepared to formalize our arrangement, he said. But I need to know. Will there be drama? Lawsuits? We can't afford distraction during the acquisition. I met his gaze directly. My separation from Vanguard was documented and clean. I violated no agreements, ethical or legal. Any drama would have to come from their side. And I think they're smart enough to know that would only raise questions about why I left. Good enough for me. Marcus stood. Carly will handle the details. Welcome back to the team. Zoe. Try not to make too many waves. I smiled. Just the necessary ones. Marcus. Just the necessary ones. The news broke on a Tuesday morning, timed perfectly for maximum impact. Voltage Motors' press release hit inboxes at 8:47 a.m. Mountain Time, just as Vanguard Mercury's executive team would be settling into their weekly strategy meeting. Voltage Motors announces strategic partnership with Zoe Hartman. Strategic for Apex Acquisition Communications. I'd crafted the release myself, every word chosen for precision. Partnership instead of hiring. My full name and new company prominently displayed. A quote from Marcus Webb praising innovative strategic thinking and proven crisis management expertise. Phrases that anyone at Vanguard would recognize from their own pitch decks. My phone started buzzing at 8:52 a.m. Sarah from legal. Holy shit, Zoe. Former teammate Mike. Did you really just... Kate. You magnificent bitch. Drinks tonight? But the call I was waiting for came at 9:15 a.m. Jennifer, my attorney. Brad Halston just contacted me, she said, her voice carrying suppressed amusement. He's claiming you violated your NDA and stole proprietary information. He sounds unhinged. And I reminded him that client relationships aren't proprietary, that you signed no non-compete, and that any attempt to interfere with your lawful business activities would result in immediate legal action. She paused. He hung up on me. I smiled, imagining Brad's face when he realized Voltage, $9.8 million of annual revenue, had just walked out the door. With me. The internal meltdown at Vanguard Mercury played out through whispered phone calls from former colleagues over the next 48 hours. Emergency meetings were called. Troy Kessler himself tried to salvage the relationship, calling Marcus directly. The response, I heard later, was brutal in its simplicity. We go where our trust goes. But the real fireworks started Thursday afternoon. I was reviewing communication strategies for the Apex acquisition when an unknown number called. You think you're clever? Brad's voice was tight with rage. You think you've won something? Brad! I kept my tone professionally neutral while hitting record on my phone. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm simply providing consulting services to a client who values my expertise. Cut the shit. You planned this. You're trying to destroy me. I'm trying to run my business, just like you're trying to run yours. Though apparently with less success. You vindictive little. He caught himself. We treated you fairly. More than fairly. And this is how you repay us? Fairly. Now my voice carried an edge. Is that what you call it? Tell me. Brad, how's your investigation going? The one where you found no evidence of your harassment? Silence. Then, you can't prove anything. I don't need to prove anything. I'm not the one calling my former colleague screaming about lost business. That might raise some questions about why I left, don't you think? He hung up. I saved the recording and forwarded it to Jennifer with a note. Documentation, just in case. The next morning, something interesting happened. I received an email from Diana Martinez, the Chief Marketing Officer at Columbus Energy Systems, another major Vanguard client. Zoe, heard about your new venture. We're reviewing our agency relationships for next year. Would love to discuss possibilities. The underground network I'd been building was already paying dividends. Women in positions of power who'd been watching, waiting for someone to successfully break away from the toxic systems that had constrained them. The true earthquake hit the following week. I was presenting Voltage's acquisition communication strategy to their board, my first major deliverable, when Carly pulled me aside during a break. Did you see the news about Vanguard? I hadn't. She showed me her phone. Vanguard Mercury under investigation for hostile workplace claims. The article was careful, citing multiple sources and pattern of complaints. But between the lines, I could read the story. My departure and Voltage's very public shift had opened floodgates. Other women were coming forward. The Whisper Network had become a roar. Did you? Carly asked. I didn't violate my NDA, I said truthfully. But I'm not the only one with a story to tell. She nodded slowly. Good. Marcus wants to issue a statement about our commitment to working with partners who share our values. Thoughts? Make it subtle but clear. Reference your decision to work with consultants who demonstrate integrity and respect. Let people connect the dots themselves. That afternoon, as I watched Voltage's statement go live, my phone rang. Rebecca Morrison from HR. Zoe, I'm calling to discuss your recent activities, she began. Her funeral director voice strained. Rebecca, I'm going to stop you there. Please communicate only through my attorney going forward. Her contact information hasn't changed. We're prepared to discuss a resolution. I already have one. It's called Running My Own Business. Have a good day, Rebecca. I hung up and blocked the number. Then I opened my laptop and got back to work on the Apex strategy. I had 3 potential clients waiting for proposals, a team of freelancers to coordinate, and a business to build. That evening, I met Kate for the drinks she'd demanded. We sat on a rooftop bar overlooking downtown Denver, the city lights spreading below us like conquered territory. You know Brad's telling everyone you're unstable, she said, that you orchestrated this whole thing out of spite. Let him. I raised my glass. While he's spinning stories, I'll be signing contracts. Speaking of which, I need a good PR manager for my team. Know anyone looking to leave a toxic workplace? Kate grinned. You're really doing this, building an alternative to all their bullshit. Someone has to. I looked out at the city, at all those office buildings full of Brads and Troys and Rebeccas. They fired me for stirring trouble. They're about to learn what trouble really looks like. The announcement of Columbus Energy Systems' partnership with my firm would drop next week. After that, 2 more clients Jennifer had connected me with. Each departure from Vanguard would raise more questions, create more cracks in their facade. I hadn't set out to destroy them. I'd simply refused to let them destroy me. If their house of cards collapsed in the process, well, they should have built it on stronger foundations than the silence of the people they'd wronged. The Denver Business Journal ran the story on page 1. Vanguard Mercury faces client exodus amid workplace culture scandal. The reporter had done her homework, connecting dots between my departure, Voltage's shift, and the subsequent investigation. 3 more clients had quietly ended their contracts. Brad Halston's name appeared 4 times, always preceded by embattled or under scrutiny. I read it over breakfast in my new office, a co-working space in Rhino with exposed brick and actual sunlight. My team had grown to 6 freelancers, all women who'd left toxic agencies with stories that echoed mine. We called ourselves refugees, only half joking. "Zoe, you need to see this," Diana called from across the room, waving me over to her laptop. Brad had given an interview to PR Week, trying to control the narrative. Disgruntled former employees spreading malicious rumors, he claimed. Competitor sabotage disguised as social justice. But the comments section told a different story. Anonymous accounts from current and former Vanguard employees painting a picture of systematic harassment and retaliation. "He's panicking," Diana observed. "Good." My phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. "Saw Brad's interview. Want to respond? I'm happy to go on record about why we switched." I thought for a moment, then typed back, "Let him hang himself. We stay focused on the work." That afternoon brought unexpected news. Jennifer called with an update that made me sit down hard in my ergonomic chair. "Brad Halston submitted his resignation this morning," she said. "My source says the board gave him a choice: resign or be terminated for cause." "And Troy?" "Under internal review." Apparently, several major investors expressed concerns about leadership accountability. The stock price has dropped 12% this week. I felt something between satisfaction and hollowness. This was what justice looked like in corporate America. Not handcuffs or apologies, just quiet resignations and vague press releases about pursuing other opportunities. "There's more," Jennifer continued. Rebecca Morrison reached out. "Vanguard wants to discuss a settlement, a real one this time." "How much?" "6 figures. Plus a public statement acknowledging that you left due to cultural differences and wishing you well in your new venture. Basically, admitting without admitting. And in exchange, you sign a more comprehensive NDA. No discussing Brad, the harassment, or anything related to your departure. Ever." I looked around my office, at my team building something new and better, at my calendar full of client meetings, at the business I'd built from fury and determination. "No. Zoe. No, Jennifer. They don't get to buy my silence now. That window closed when they called me crazy and threw me out. I'm not violating my current NDA. I'm not defaming anyone. I'm just running my business and letting the truth speak for itself." She sighed, but I could hear the smile. "I figured you'd say that. I'll tell them to pound sand more professionally." That evening, Troy Kessler's resignation was announced. To focus on personal opportunities. The press release claimed. By then, 2 more clients had reached out to me directly. My little firm was booking into next quarter. Sarah from legal, now from Vanguard's former legal department, called me that night. "I wanted you to know I gave my notice today, and I submitted a complaint to the EEOC. About Brad, about Troy, about all of it." "Sarah, that's incredibly brave. You showed us it was possible to leave and survive, to do more than survive." She paused. "I kept records too, emails, recordings, everything. My lawyer says it's a strong case." "Who's your lawyer?" "Jennifer Moss. She says you recommended her." I smiled. "She's the best." Take them for everything. Sarah. A week later, I stood before VoltEdge's full board, presenting the final phase of our acquisition communication strategy. The campaign had been flawless, media coverage positive, stakeholder concerns addressed, stock price climbing steadily. Exceptional work, Marcus said as the board members filtered out. You've exceeded every expectation. That's what I do, I replied simply. Indeed. Which is why I want to discuss expanding our contract. We're considering bringing all strategic communications in-house, building a dedicated team. We'd need someone to lead it, someone with vision, experience, and frankly, balls of steel. I raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a department, your name on the door, your team, your rules. Think about it. As I left the building, I passed a newsstand. Vanguard Mercury's troubles had made the business section again. Agency faces multiple lawsuits as culture crisis deepens. A photo showed their downtown office building, the same one I'd been escorted from 6 months ago. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. You must be pleased with yourself. I knew that tone. That bitter entitlement. Brad, from whatever hole he'd crawled into. I typed back, I'm busy building something. You should try it sometime. Then I blocked the number and kept walking. I had 3 interviews scheduled for tomorrow. Talented women looking to join a firm that valued their voices. Next week, I'd decide about Marcus's offer. Next month, we'd move into real office space. They'd fired me for stirring trouble, for refusing to play their game, for having the audacity to say no. They'd thought they were ending my story. Instead, they'd given me the push I needed to write my own. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of True North Strategies, watching my team set up for our launch party. The space was everything Vanguard Mercury wasn't. Open floor plan, natural light, actual plants that someone remembered to water. The logo on the wall, clean and modern, bore my name as founder and CEO. Nervous? Kate asked, handing me champagne. She'd been my first hire, bringing 3 major clients with her from Vanguard's crumbling empire. Excited, I corrected, watching the caterers arrange food that didn't come from sad corporate platters. The RSVPs had exceeded expectations. Clients, journalists, industry leaders, people who'd watched my very public exit and subsequent rise with interest. Even some former Vanguard employees who'd found their own escape routes. Marcus Webb arrived early, as promised. VoltEdge had become more than our anchor client. They'd provided seed funding for True North's expansion. Impressive, he said, surveying the space. How many employees now? 15 full-time, about to be 20. And a network of freelancers who share our values about respectful workplaces and honest communication. Any regrets about turning down the in-house position? I smiled. None. This is bigger than one company. This is about changing how the industry operates. As the room filled, I spotted familiar faces. Diana, now our VP of Strategy. Sarah, who'd won her EEOC complaint and used the settlement to fund a nonprofit supporting workplace harassment victims. Even Rebecca Morrison was there. She'd left Vanguard's HR department and was consulting on building healthy workplace cultures. Turned out she'd been trapped in the system too, just in a different way. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus called for attention as the sun set over Denver's skyline. I'd like to propose a toast to Zoe Hartman, who reminded us all that integrity isn't just a corporate buzzword, it's a business strategy. The applause was warm, genuine. These weren't people playing politics or calculating their next move. These were professionals who'd chosen to work with someone who'd refused to be silenced. Thank you, I said, raising my glass. But this isn't just about me. It's about every person in this room who's chosen courage over comfort, truth over convenience. It's about building something better than what we left behind. I caught sight of someone at the back of the room, a young woman, maybe 25, clutching a resume. The eager nervousness in her eyes reminded me of myself at that age, before I'd learned how sharp the corporate world's teeth could be. When I was fired from Vanguard Mercury, I continued. They told me I wasn't a team player. They were right. I wasn't willing to play for a team that protected predators and punished integrity. So I built my own team. And if you're here tonight, you're part of it. More applause. The young woman was taking notes on her phone, probably live tweeting. Good. Let the story spread. Later, as the party wound down, Jennifer pulled me aside. You should know, Brad Halston's lawsuit against his former partners was dismissed. Apparently, he tried to claim wrongful termination. How'd that work out? About as well as you'd expect when multiple employees testify about your harassment. He's moved to Florida, selling real estate or something. I felt the last weight of anger lift from my chest. He was irrelevant now. A footnote in a story that had become about so much more than one man's wandering hands. The young woman with the resume approached as I was saying goodbye to guests. Ms. Hartman, I'm Emma Chen. I just graduated from DU, and I've been following your story since the Voltage announcement. I was wondering. Send your resume to Diana, I said, handing her a card. We're always looking for people who value courage over comfort. Her face lit up. Thank you. And thank you for showing us it's possible to fight back and win. I didn't win, I corrected gently. I just refused to lose. There's a difference. As the last guest departed and my team cleaned up, I stood by the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, in those glowing office buildings, other women were dealing with their own Brad Halstons, their own hostile HR departments, their own impossible choices. But maybe, just maybe, some of them had heard about the woman who got fired for stirring trouble and turned it into a $15 million company in 18 months. Maybe they'd realized they had options beyond silence or surrender. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message from a name I didn't recognize. I just filed a harassment complaint at my company. Reading about what you built gave me courage. Thank you. I screenshotted it and added it to a folder labeled Why We Do This. It had 847 messages and counting. They fired me for stirring trouble. What they didn't know was trouble fights back, and sometimes trouble wins. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced a similar situation? How did you handle it? Your experiences and perspectives make these stories richer for everyone. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories about courage, justice, and the power of refusing to be silenced.